Welcome to the 5-Day Blues Guitar Challenge. This is just one lesson in a series where I'll teach you 5 different super fun blues progressions that will help you reboot your guitar practice. And if you want to learn the guitar practice method that has changed the lives of over 21,000 guitar players, you need to check out my online guitar reboot workshop to ensure you get the most out of your guitar practice. Just click the link here in the video or in the description. All right, let's get started. Today, you've got a 12-bar blues in the key of A on tap, but this one's gonna be funkified, and I'm gonna show you how to funkify it. When you listen to this riff, it's something that may cause a little bit of nervousness because there's seemingly a lot going on, but what we're gonna do is layer this, okay? There's the rhythmic portion, there's the fretting portion, and then there's the moving it around the neck portion. The good news is this is really only one move, meaning once you learn the physical movements, all you're doing is moving it around. So we're gonna sink a lot of time into learning the single movement, and then we'll look at moving it around and kind of arranging it. But let's focus on this movement. This is one of those things that you hear it and you're like, whoa, there is a lot going on there. But what I want you to understand here is that if we isolate the parts, it's much easier to see how they all fit together and ultimately learn it. So let's actually isolate the parts. And what I want you to do is just strum a percussive rhythm with me. And the reason I want you to do that is because this is a pretty percussive heavy piece. And a lot of times that can short circuit our brain. And it's like, you forget about pick direction and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, what's happening? So let's just go ahead and look at the tab and count what I want you to do. So the tabs, you're gonna go 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 1, and 2, and 3, 4, and. I'll do that, I'll count it one more time. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 1, and 2, and 3, 4, and. So here's how we're gonna do this on the guitar. I just want you to literally hold the strings. Don't worry about fretting a chord. Don't worry about doing anything. I just want you to do percussive strokes, right? Down on the numbered beats, up on the and beats, okay? So if I'm gonna count along with this and do a percussive strum, and I'll translate this into pick direction here a little bit later, but let's go ahead and do the counting with it, and I'll cycle through it 2 times. So here goes nothing. It's gonna go 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 1, and 2, and 3, 4, and. We'll do that one more time. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 1, and 2, and 3, 4, and. Okay. Now I'm going to do it with pick direction just so we're all on the same page. It'll be down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, okay? That's the rhythm, and the reason I'm having you do that percussively is because once we start adding the fretted portion of this in, you might feel like you lose touch with that. You can always go back to that percussive rhythm and really, really dial that in before you attempt the fretting part of this. But we're gonna dive into the fretting part so we get the complete package here. We're gonna start by barring the G and the B string on the 5th fret. And that's gonna be our first downstroke. We're gonna follow that with a hammer-on with our middle finger on the 6th fret of the G string, okay? It'll sound like this. 1 and, 1 and, okay? Now, if you're having a hard time doing this by barring the G and the B, you can isolate it to the single string and just do the G string. But you lose a little bit of the oomph. So I'll have you strive to do the full bar because it really does make it have a little bit more punch. So again, barring the 5th fret of the G and the B string, and then hammering on the 6th fret of the G string with the middle finger. A couple things to note here. As we're barring the 5th fret, there's 2 sites of muting that are going on. First, the very tip of my index finger is actually muting the D string. If I inadvertently hit that string, it won't make a noise because it's muted. It's kind of a little pro tip, so strive to get your finger in that position. The same is true for the high E string. That's muted as well. So even if I'm willy-nilly with my pick, I'm still getting just those 2 strings. It's kind of a little secret to help clean up your playing a little bit. So again, on the 1 beat, we do a downstroke and hammer on to the 6th fret of the G string. Right, from there, we're gonna do a dead stroke on a down. So on the up, we're gonna bar the 7th fret of the G and the B string. And again, we're gonna try our best to mute that D string and that high E, because we're gonna be hitting just the G and the B on the upstroke. So it'll sound like this. That's the down on the 2 beat, the up on the and of 2, down, up. So let's just combine those two pieces, okay? Because really this is gonna be actually the majority of the riff. So we have the hammer-on part, and you can just loop that part. Sounds very ZZ Top-ish. I kind of like that. And I'll announce the pick strokes as I do it. I'll do it a little bit slower. So it's down, down, up. Down, down, up. Or 1 and 2 and. Okay. So let's keep building this because this is getting really good here. We're going to have 2 dead strokes on a down and an up. Kind of already did that, right? So let's chain it all together. We have, well, sorry. Right? So we have 1 and 2 and 3 and. I'll do that one more time. 1 and 2 and 3 and. Now for the 4 and, to finish out the first measure, we do the same thing we kicked off the measure with. Pretty easy, right? We already have that down. So if I'm going to chain the whole thing together, it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. I'll do that one more time a little bit slower. In fact, what I'll do is actually loop this because I think it'll be easier to fall into the groove. So it'll sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Slow it down one more time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Even if you isolate just that first measure and keep looping that, that in and of itself is useful. And I think you'll find a lot of fun and a lot of creativity just sprouting out of that one little measure. The good news is the second measure of this 2-measure riff is pretty darn easy. It just involves a mini chord shape and some really careful attention to timing. So let's go ahead and make that mini chord shape. We're gonna be barring the 5th fret on the high E and the B string, middle finger, 6th fret of the G, ring finger, 7th fret of the D. All right, it's like taking a little baby F chord and moving it up to the 5th fret. So for that second measure, it's gonna start out with a down and up dead strum, a down and up chord strum, a down chord strum, and then a dead strum. I'll count along with it. So it'll go 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and on those dead strums at the end. I'll do it a little bit slower. I want to look at the tab to make sure that I'm giving you the accurate count. It'll be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. One more time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay? This one's a little bit tricky. If you just loop that second half of the measure, you'll start to really jive with the rhythm. The cool thing is your fretting hand's not doing anything. It's just pressing a button, right? When you want a dead strum, you don't press the strings or the button. When you want a chord strum, you press the button. It's as simple as that. So all together, it's gonna sound like this. Now, quick note, because you've learned most of it by now. If counting along or focusing on pick strokes throws you way off base, don't worry about it. This is one of those things that it might just feel better to count or to not count it at all and to just feel it as opposed to try and count every little chunk. That's totally okay. That's not a fail. That's not a misstep. That's not a mistake. I want you to be able to play this. And for some, that means counting it. For some, that means focusing on pick strokes. For some, that just means listening to it and feeling it. All three of those approaches are totally fine. In fact, if you can play this and you use a completely different approach, that's fine too. So now that we know the meat and potatoes of this, all we have to do is move it around, okay? So we start out on this 5th fret. We do that 2 times. Then we move up to the 10th fret, right? So we're gonna take that whole thing, and it's kind of modeled after this little mini F chord shape up at the 10th fret. So we bar the G and B at the 10th, hammer on to the 11th, dead, bar that 12th fret on the G and B, upstroke, finish with the hammer on, make that mini F chord shape. So it's the same exact physical execution, just slid up the fretboard, spanning the 10th, 11th, and 12th. Then we move back to that middle chunk, spanning the 5th fret. And then the E part, the part over the E chord, is cool because we don't have to really bar anything. You know, we're moving to an open position, so we're gonna strike the G and the B open, hammer on to the 1st fret of the G with our index finger, right? No barring there. Dead strum, up, barring the G and the B on the 2nd fret, finish out with the hammer on. Right? So it's the same exact thing, we're just moving it to the open position. So you have the 3 pieces, right? We do the 5th fret piece 2 times in a row for the first line of the tad, move it up to the 10th fret for the first half of the 2nd line, back to the 5th fret for the second half of the 2nd line. Go to this first part here for the first measure of the 3rd line. We don't even have to do the chord part because we only have a measure to use, so we're just gonna do the... And then we're gonna zoom all the way up to the 10th fret, play the first half of the riff, and then finish at home base there at the 5th fret. Now, one final thing I wanna mention is that the stretch from the 1st fret all the way to the 10th fret is a huge one, okay? So please take it slowly. Don't feel like you have to play this fast. Now, with that being said, it's really fun to play fast and almost easier to play fast. But when you're focusing on this huge transition from here, that's a lot of real estate to cover. So be very intentional about once you finish that riff over the E chord, you're already on your way to that 10th fret. In fact, you can even practice just that transition, right? From the 1st fret all the way to the 10th fret. Yes, you can bump it up here, but let's just add a little bit of a challenge to it, shall we? And if it's too big of a stretch, you can always bump it to span the 12th and the 14th fret. So there you have it, a funkified blues for you. This was taken off of, inspired by, I should say, a Johnny Winter riff that I really enjoyed playing on the electric guitar, and I thought, you know what, this is just as useful on the acoustic guitar. In fact, the percussive part comes through way stronger. So this is a chance for you to work on your hammer-ons, your closed movable chord shape positions, and your percussive strumming. So a lot of stuff wrapped up into this one. Have fun, take it slow, and of course, take it piece by piece.